Today's podcast is brought to you by Blue Canary. The bird has landed on beautiful Bainbridge Island, conveniently located at 499 Madison Avenue. ASE Master Technician Clint Ramsey brings over 15 years of experience, award-winning diagnostic skill, and a desire to reinvent the automotive repair experience. Schedule an appointment online at bluecanary.biz or call them today at 206-451-4220. I got something for your mind, body, and soul. I got something for your mind, body, and soul.
You have found the B.I.STANDER Podcast. Now here's your host with the most, Tiny Tim.
What's good, Podcastville? You found the B.I.STANDER Podcast. Your host is Tiny Tim on the microphone here with Christy Carr. How are you this morning?
Doing well, thanks.
Good. The Kid Casual is going to have a conversation with our former senior planner of the city of Bainbridge Island and former city council member now, right?
Correct.
And now you're over on the water side doing environmental analysis for Seattle, correct?
Yes. I'm an environmental analyst for the Department of Construction and Inspections in Seattle, city of Seattle.
Can you fit that on a business card?
You know, they never gave me any.
Cutbacks.
Yeah.
I want to move this mic a little closer to you.
Yeah,
Thank
sure.
you. I brought you in here because I wanted to meet you. I've heard lots of good things about you. I was wondering how you made the transfer from the city planning department to city council member and why you left that position for not as glamorous of a spot in city council.
Yeah, it wasn't a direct transition. I left my job as a city planner. I kind of had professionally tapped out, I think, more or less in terms of what options were for advancing in my career. It was clear I wasn't going to be the planning director, so there wasn't really anything else for me to do there. A job opportunity came up in Seattle that I thought would be good for me. It would allow a more diverse customer group as well as a more diverse project type. I had kind of seen it all on Bainbridge in 5 years, and so going over to the bigger pond, if you will, was exciting for me for a few reasons. That being said, once I did leave my role in the planning department and the opportunity came up to be on council, I thought, maybe I'm not quite done yet. There were some things that I hadn't finished, and I thought, I've got a skill set it seems the council could use. So it was an easy throw your ring in the hat. I didn't have to run a campaign and go through an election. So
Yeah. Tell us, Podcastville here, how that happens. Like, were you taking Matt Turman's spot?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Matt. Hope you're listening. Hope you're doing well. When he decided to leave, did they just round up a bunch of people that they knew and ask if you guys would put your
Not
name
at
in the
all.
hat?
No, it was a formal application process. So there was an actual application that you filled out. And there were
Nobody took you to the front of the line?
Nobody did. No. I'd known and worked with most of the council people because of my job. So I at least had some familiarity with them and, of course, how council worked because I sat at a lot of council meetings. And so I gave most of them. Actually, I gave all of them a call beforehand and just said, hey, I'm thinking of applying. What do you think? And so had pretty good conversation with each of the council members beforehand, really to get a sense of, should I do this? Am I crazy? And they didn't scare me off. So I thought, all right, I'll give it a shot. And so there was a application process with a list of questions that were, just kind of typical questions about background and your vision for the city, et cetera. And then we went through a Zoom interview process, which was pretty excruciating. And I think there were 7 candidates, and that was a long, long meeting. But at the end of the meeting, they then retreat to executive session to discuss it. They don't vote in executive session, just like on any issue. They do that in public, and so then they voted in public at that meeting, and there was a little drama at the end, and ultimately I was unanimously selected.
Little drama. There's been so much drama during your tenure, and you've stayed out of the fray, which is impressive in its own right. Looking back on it, do you feel like it was a crazy move now?
No, not at all. I mean, I think definitely it gave me some gray hair, and I think that I learned a lot probably about myself more than anything else. My learning curve on council wasn't that steep because, again, I had a background. I knew what an ordinance was. I'd written a bunch of them. I kind of knew what was going on. Of course, I don't know everything, and I was learning about budget and more things about public works and finance, et cetera. But, I kind of knew the scene. I think that politics was brand new to me. That was eye-opening. And I think in terms of the fray and staying out of it, it's really hard. It's really easy to get caught up in it and to buy into the spin and to start to be a political person or entity. And I didn't like that. And I didn't like who I could become. I could be good at it, I think, because I can see how it works, but it's not ultimately how I really want to operate. I think the other thing, too, is, I could have probably done it longer. I could have run, and if I were elected, I would have done it and probably enjoyed it. I think there's a lot to learn about being a leader and an effective leader and a bold leader. I was enjoying kind of coming into that. And the difference between being on staff and being on council, and they make it very clear that you need to stay in your lane. And we're a city manager council form of government. So, council's got a specific role that's in the state statute, and you're supposed to do things and you're not supposed to do things. And so having come from the staff side, I knew how things worked, and so sometimes it was frustrating to see that things weren't working or they weren't working as quickly as I thought they could. But I just had to stay in my lane. And so that was somewhat frustrating. I tend to be a worker bee. I like to do the work. I like to show up prepared. I like to offer solutions. I like to figure out how to do things and how to move them forward. But that's not always what the deal is, being on council.
What ultimately made you decide not to return?
Well, we were just talking about mental health before going on air, and I think that's a big one. I do have to kind of be more honest with myself in terms of what I can really handle. I have a full-time job. I am a parent of a sophomore, and I like to have a life. I think I kind of, being on council is a little bit like being in grad school. It's always there. It's always hanging over your head. And I think I got to the point where I would even just be at the dinner table with my son and I wasn't listening to him. I was thinking about the next meeting, or I was thinking about the last email I got.
That's bad headspace, right?
And that's not good headspace. I also think, I think people know, if they know me or my council work, I have a skill set or background in land use planning. I think there's a ton to get done right now in that realm. But there's an interim planning director, and there's a pretty brand new city manager, and there's a brand new council. And again, because I understand how to get things done, and I think I have a pretty good handle on what needs to get done, not necessarily the outcomes, but I understand the process and the things that we need to be doing as a city related to land use. I think that's going to be on a really slow pace for the next 18 to 24 months, just because of where we are with staff and council, frankly. And I think that would just be too frustrating for me. And
Going too slow, you mean?
Yeah, and just maybe not going in the right direction. And I think, I got to be appointed. I didn't run a campaign, and running a campaign seemed kind of scary. I mean, I generally got positive feedback when I was on council from constituents, but that's a really vulnerable space, and I just don't think I was really mentally, again, up for doing that. So I kind of just took the pass on it.
Yeah, I think city council in general is a vulnerable space.
It very much is so. And I think that people don't recognize that or realize that.
You don't realize those people are our neighbors.
Yeah.
That's number one.
We're all neighbors. We all live on this island. And sure, folks might think city council people have big egos or they have hidden agendas, but
are you here to say they don't?
I'm not going to say they don't. I mean, certainly ego plays a role. I mean, you have to have some sense of self and ego to do that because, again, it's a process that you're putting yourself through to go through an election and a campaign. Ego
seems like such a bad driver.
It is. And I think that was disappointing to me to find out that was such a big part of it. And I think that I got caught up in that, and I realized I don't need to own anything. I need to push forward things that are good for the community, and I will work with people to that end. And so I think that it took me a while to realize that and get my feet under that. But it is hard on a day-to-day basis to deal with people and personalities who aren't necessarily willing to do that. The proverbial olive branch, or you go first, or we're all in this together, or I don't like you, but you have a good idea, so let's go for it. Go with it. It's just I don't do a lot of drama in my life and in my work and in my profession, and so drama isn't something I really want to be a part of. And then when that starts to become, outweigh the work, then I get less interested in doing the work, which is what I guess frustrated me as well. Is that I was, I got to a point at times where it's just like,
yeah, totally.
Why bother?
I mean, I think I've talked to every single council member except one, which I probably won't. But I felt like there was a lack of transparency when I moved here to the island. That was back in Doug Schultz days, and Doug was one of my first interviews, as well as Cole being the mayor. I just wanted more information, what was going on and why it was going on. And now I've interviewed so many people that politics is in me, which never were before. I couldn't tell a Democrat from a Republican or whatever. And now I've done many, many podcasts around politics and have enjoyed it somewhat. But when it comes to city council now, I feel I'm even burnt out on that because it seems like total drama island, and we can't get into the weeds of good conversations about land use and such because there's always some type of drama hanging over the city council. Did you feel like it was a bit of a circus at times? I don't want you to throw anybody under the bus.
No, of course it was a circus at times.
You're gone, so
yeah, and I was a part of it. And I'm not, when I'm speaking of council during
my you were a part of it?
I was there. I think that there's 7 people. We all share a responsibility.
You never stuck out.
Well, I mean, I appreciate that, but
and when I mean stuck out, it means stuck out in a negative way over something.
It's just like we're an island community, we're all responsible for our community. We're a city council, we're all responsible for that city council. So regardless of whether or not I stuck out in a negative way, I could have stuck out in a more positive way. So I think that it's challenging. It's really hard. I mean, you do have 7 different people going 7 different ways at times. Unfortunately, we're not, we're all nonpartisan. People don't run as a Democrat or Republican or whatever. But it's frustrating if you step back and you realize that on a policy level, most of the time, at this point in time, council's on the same page. And so when they can't get together and move things forward on things they agree about, then it's just maddening because things are getting in the way that shouldn't get in the way. Kind of back to transparency or what's going on. One thing I did try to do when I was on council was work with the interim or acting city manager on our work plan, because I think that we could use the city's work plan as a really good communication tool with the community, and we could the council could pick 10 things that you're going to work on, and you could have milestones associated with it and timeline, and it could be used out to share out what the council is doing and also to hold the council accountable, because you mentioned Cole as mayor. One thing that he did was he initiated this on the wall. They talked about their goals that were on the wall. And when I was applying to be on the council, I went back. I think they started that in 2018. So I went back and got the 2018, 19, and 20 on the wall goals. And half of them were just gone. Like, where did they go? And why weren't they done? Or did you do them? And can we celebrate some success? And so when I was in the planning department, we called it the shiny squirrel, because something was always coming in the door that took your attention away from what you were doing. And I think that that's really the way that council now operates. And they need to stay on track. And I thought if we had a work plan and that we attached it to every agenda and we said, oh, this is our work plan, and when a council person wanted to bring something on, walk it onto an agenda or to have it on a future agenda, we could say, no, look, we've got this work plan. It doesn't fit in, or are we going to take something off? Because when you just kept adding and adding and adding to the work plan.
That's when the meetings started getting 4 to 6 hours, right?
Exactly. And you didn't get done what you said you wanted to get done or that you said you would get done. And so I think that the city as an organization and along with the council needs to work on that organizational infrastructure. And I think that would go a long way in helping people understand what the city's doing and to be more transparent, because I don't buy into the conspiracy theories. I don't buy into the backdoor conversations. I've sat in every chair. I've been in executive sessions as staff. I've been in executive sessions as a council member. I've sat in the planning director's office, the city manager's office, the city attorney's office. I'm just doing the job. I've always just been, and I think most people are. But I think that there is still a need to establish better trust so that people aren't mistrustful and aren't assuming that people are doing things behind closed doors.
We're skirting around a lot of things, which is what we should do, I guess. But don't you think that some of that stuff was happening? I mean, I feel like I would see multiple council members meet for lunch or drinks or something, which felt like a backdoor meeting in my mind.
Well, 3 council people can meet whenever they want and talk about whatever they want.
Yeah, then there's table adjacent, right?
See, I've never done that. I've actually never had lunch.
Nobody's buying you lunch, Christy?
No. Dang it. Did I miss something?
Yeah.
Did I miss the memo on that? I was also in a different time because it was COVID.
True.
I only sat at the dais once. So I wasn't hanging out with anybody. So maybe my experience was different because of that. I had Zoom meetings with 2 other council people.
Yeah, Did you ever feel like you went into executive session and it seemed like all the ducks were in a row, and then come out to city council meeting and somebody would go south from what they had said in the initial conversation?
No.
Everybody's pretty true.
Well,
they didn't put the little caveat on their vote or something. I'm going to vote yes for this, but
no, you can't do that in executive session.
But you can.
You're not quote counting votes in executive session. That's not what it's for. You can't. It's not allowed.
But it's implied a bit, right?
I mean, you can talk about it, and so one might be able to assess how someone's going to vote. But I don't remember any sort of drastic turnaround from executive session to on the dais.
Yeah, I can't pick an example right off my head right now, but it seemed like you would bat things around back and forth, and then a vote would come, and sometimes the votes were contrary to what I was hearing in the city council meeting. So that's just public.
Well,
and people have the right to change their mind.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think that I can say that, again, back to that vulnerable space of being on council, even not sitting in public at the dais, but just being on a Zoom meeting. There's momentum in a meeting. There's a kind of a tide. And I think that
ebbs and flows.
And you're also thinking real time. There's also a level of preparedness, like how prepared were you for that meeting? There can be good public comment that makes you think and potentially change your mind. So it's not necessarily that someone's flip-flopping, although that happens. It could be that, hey, I've thought about it, I have information, and I've changed my mind. So it is, ultimately you've got to vote. And that can be hard. I mean, you don't walk into every meeting knowing how you're going to vote or even have a high level of confidence in your vote. Votes can be hard. This police station conversation has been around for 30 years, and votes have changed over the years, and priorities have changed over the years. And
how do you see that washing out?
I think that the city's going to build a police court facility on Madison Avenue. I think that's going to happen. Whether or not it's the right place for a police court facility or we paid too much for it.
Isn't there some talk by Michael Pollack about trying to stop this in this situation, building the police station and have an audit of the funds and stuff like that?
I am at this point a citizen just like you in terms of information. And what I read in the paper and if I tune into a city council meeting, that's the level of information I have. So my understanding is the council voted to put the bid package out for the Harrison facility. And my understanding is that there was some sort of action or claim that may or may not be filed against the city related to the purchase. Whether or not that moves forward, I don't know. Whether or not it's an action that could stop it, I don't know that either.
Yeah, it seems silly to, in my opinion, and take that for what it's worth, to try to stop this after we've already spent the money and we've had the public comment and we've had the meetings, and it is what it is. We did pay a lot, and it's not ideal, but it's needed, and let's go forward. I don't think we're going to return on that investment if we sold it, and then we'd still be out of police station.
Right.
So I don't know why there's so much pushback now after the fact about government spending on that particular site in general. What are some of the things that you're most fond of accomplishing while you're on city council?
Staying sane, I guess.
It's an accomplishment.
Yeah. No, it's kind of funny. It's the little things. I drive by the Grand Forest entrance, and people who use the Grand Forest probably don't like my accomplishment, but I got no parking signs put up along the east side of the road next to the entrance because people were parking on the shoulder that we paid money to put in for bicycle and pedestrian use.
And I'm so thankful that roads widened And that
I like it. Yeah, I think that it's a good learning experience for us.
Same with Eagle Harbor. I would like to see a guardrail between the road and the bicycle path. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's ever in the works, so there's some type of protection.
Right.
I have a fear of that road myself because I had a bad bicycle accident, but that was before the widening had come, and there seemed to be a lot of false white lines, and very little shoulder and stuff like that. So I'm thankful that a few of these roads that are traveled highly are getting widened.
Yeah, I probably have a lot more to say than anyone's interested in on cycling and sustainable transportation infrastructure.
No, I think it's really important to this island.
It is, yeah. And actually, one of the first things I did when I moved to the island was volunteer to be on the city's first non-motorized transportation plan, sort of some committee related to something. It was 20 years ago. It's hard to remember. So I've kind of been paying attention for quite a long time. I think that concrete, widened shoulders take concrete, they take carbon, they take money, and they're not necessarily going to get us to the sustainable multimodal transportation network that the island needs. I intended to ride my bike here today, but I didn't, and it wasn't because there's not a separated path for me. It's because I wanted my hair to look nice, and I'm meeting someone for lunch afterwards. It's cold outside, and a lot of other factors that separated bike lanes aren't going to make disappear. Lower speed limits, I think we need to address on a comprehensive island-wide level, and I know people don't like that. We can do a lot with traffic calming. I think we can be a lot more tactical with separation in terms of where it's really needed. I'm really excited about the project at Buckland Hill, right by Hyla. I think that's a spot that we really do need to address.
Tell me about that. I'm not familiar. I know where the location is.
It's a weird intersection, right? Because it's got all sorts of different roads coming in and out, and it's a blind intersection, and the road's in a bad spot, and there is a fire station and a school. So in terms of I just think that it's a small location where something needs to be done, and so I think they're just widening they're just providing shoulders, but I don't actually know. But the project is, but it is on the list, I think, for the next year or two. So I think that we have a limited amount of money, right? And the last levy for multimodal failed pretty dramatically.
I voted against it, and I was a big proponent of having one.
I voted against it too, and frankly, I'll probably vote against the next one. I think that we have to understand that there's a segment of our community that's never going to ride their bike, and they may not be up for walking places.
Well, I don't want to take 14 to 20 years to build something too that I'm never going to see or is going to be obsolete by the time it's finally built. And I felt like it was $1 million a block, and there was no specific area that it was going to, and it was going to just be loose change that the city could play with. That was kind of the reasons that I didn't vote for the mobility.
Right. Madison's a pretty good example. The city council is looking at doing a good thing, which is bundling projects right out by the fire station and the highway and south to, I think, maybe Winslow. A sidewalk project, a bike lane, separated bike lane, and then they've got some water and sewer to do, so they want to do it at the same time, which there's some efficiencies there. But in terms of putting in a separated bike lane, when you have grow and you have level, where those are probably more appropriate places for bicycles and walkers to be in the first place.
Because there's less traffic.
Right. Correct. Yeah. And so there are no data about ridership or counts right now in terms of who's riding where in that corridor, and it's a $5 million project. And so it's acknowledged that we may not even need to do that to have those non-motorized improvements. The design, I don't think, works. And even if it's like a pilot project, which I've heard some council people say, well, we may not need it, but it's a good thing to have because people will see what separated bike lanes look like? Well, that is a very urban, non-motorized treatment and design, and it doesn't belong anywhere else on the island. So there's no reason to have a pilot project so that we can see how this
You're
facility...
not going to duplicate it elsewhere.
No, it would not be appropriate anywhere else on the island. That being said, we talk about we need to have... Why would we have more improvements in Winslow? Our own buildable lands analysis says that 70% of our growth capacity is outside of Winslow. So we need to be able to get people to Winslow, not necessarily in and around Winslow. So I just feel like we sometimes look at things, we're not even thinking about the land use transportation connection enough, because our land use and our transportation system, they don't match up very well. And it's probably one of the most challenging pieces of a non-motorized transportation or transportation network in general. I mean, it's something that I heard about in grad school 20 years ago, like over and over and over, the land use transportation connection. We don't do it very well on the island. And I think that we just need to think more about how we get people between places.
I really like the STO trail, the Sound to Olympics trail. It's nice to have all those bikes off the highway when the ferry just lets out and stuff. Lets the cars rush on ahead and, gets the bikes off the road. It's nice. It's very walkable too.
I've used it. I mean, I don't commute on the ferry anymore. I did. I used to live on the north end of the island for 5 years, and I rode my bike on and off the ferry. I never took 305. At that point, I would go up Erickson, and then pop out at Madison and take the highway there. So in terms of a commuter resource, I don't know how useful it is. I still see people on the 305 shoulder because it makes you go straight up a hill, and cyclists don't want to do that necessarily. I like the STO, though, as a community member. I use it. It's a cool walking and biking route. I have used it just kind of not in a commuter, but in a transportation way, as well as a recreation way. I think it's a good facility. I think it was ridiculously controversial. I think you've got to give a shout out to Don Willott for that facility, because he worked on that for 20 years. I mean, he's had that vision, and I think that he's an example of someone who really understands how you can get things done and has an incredible amount of patience to see things through. So unfortunately, that was, bunches of trees came down and the city didn't handle that well. And so... Well,
it was the same time they put you can't cut your own tree down at your own home, and then they clear cut a whole pathway for bicycles, and it was a little hypocritical. And it just got done from the Visconti property, too, where people were chaining themselves to trees and stuff. And we got a little tree hugging happy for a while there.
Yes. Yeah, it has come down a little bit. I think that residents who have trees they want to manage or take down have a valid point about maybe the discrepancy between the built environment, what comes down as part of some sort of infrastructure or development, and then what they can or can't do, or the process and the length of time and the money they have to spend to take down a tree. Or to get told they can't.
Well, it's frustrating too as an observer seeing, across from Rotary there, those McMansions went in, and they weren't required to build out a sidewalk in front. It was up to the developer, and then there was not trees that needed to be replaced along with the houses. There was a lot of clear cut there, but then the builder didn't have to continue to plant, X amount of trees. So that's a development project. And then let's say you have a tree and you want to have a little bit better view, and it's not an old growth tree. You should be able to cut it, no questions asked. In my mind,
In most cases, you can, unless you're in one of our special areas, like a critical area or the shoreline, and then the city. So
how big is the critical area, though? It seemed like some of the critical area was on High School Road and in the middle there where the forest was, across from Mandis Olson. You know what I'm talking about?
Are you talking about a specific project? Or
Well, there's a property, and the guy deforested a bit of the forest to make it healthier.
Oh, on High School Road?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then he got rustled a bit with the critical area ordinance, and he wanted to build his dream house, and he had all that property, and he enjoys being a steward of the land, and, worked really hard for that spot. And then came where he had to have X amount of native plants, and a percentage of his property had to be deemed for the city. And
so I wrote that regulation, and I'm familiar with that property, although I left the city before it was figured out. So
do you think that's a fair situation for a person like that?
That's a I'd say almost one-off. Because he was already engaged with, I think, the state in terms of a forest stewardship program. Mm-hmm. And so what the rule or the standard that you're talking about is in the Critical Areas Ordinance, and what it's called is the Aquifer Recharge Protection Area. So if you hit a certain threshold of development or land disturbing activity, which is tied to our site assessment review through our stormwater regulations. So we tried to make this the triggers, if you will, or thresholds after which you had to do something or you're required to do something the same, so that people didn't have to keep all these different numbers straight. So when you go over a certain amount of land disturbing activity or new what are called hard surfaces like driveways or structures, then you have to designate what's called an aquifer recharge protection area. And this is only within our conservation area, which is the 80% of the island. It's our low density residential zones, the R0.4, 1, and 2. So what it is that you have to designate the ARPA, which is up to 65% of the native vegetation that is currently on the property. So if you have 100% native forest, then you have to designate 65% of it as your ARPA. And it's in the Critical Areas Ordinance. It's the Aquifer Recharge Protection Area because it is intended to protect our aquifer, because we're a sole source aquifer. It's our only source of drinking water. Mm-hmm. And so because we have an unknown carrying capacity and there is not 100% assurance that we have enough groundwater for the development that we need to plan for, per our Growth Management Act allocations, we took the precautionary principle approach, which is what our comprehensive plan says we should, and said the best way to protect our aquifer is to protect these chunks of native vegetation on property.
I'm going to give you another test. The property on Sands that was clear cut for agriculture, and that was like 300 trees or whatever.
That rule's gone, that whole section of the code. It was called vegetation management. It was not in the Critical Areas Ordinance. It was in the Environment section of 1622. So we repealed that. The city repealed that allowance, basically. And what that was that there are percentages of properties, and that, again, is in our low-density residential zone. It's in the R0.4. And so you could have cleared a certain percentage. There was an allowance if you had a farm plan from the Kitsap Conservation District.
Like then one plant in one pot in that whole area.
Yeah, I actually reviewed that project when I was on staff, and I'll just say it's a disaster. And I don't think that the city has done their job in following up because they're supposed to have a farm, because they were allowed to do that because they had a farm plan. That project was a real challenge. And yeah, they're supposed to have a farm there, and I haven't seen the farm.
Those people moved here and have zero friends.
Oh,
because they've cleared so much timber out of there. And
I don't know them.
I don't either.
I interacted with them on a professional, applicant level, and they were allowed to do that. Our code let them do that. So it's not like it's a code violation. It's not like they cleared their property and they weren't allowed to.
What was the backstory about them getting a GoFundMe to obtain legal counsel to go through this process? Is that a true story?
I do not know. There was a legal process associated with it.
Yeah.
Because the permit was approved, but there were a number of conditions attached to it, and they appealed a number of those conditions. And so that we did go to the hearing examiner over that.
Who repealed them?
They appealed the conditions, the applicants, the owners of the property.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and honestly, I cannot remember the details of that project. But it's typical if you have a permit and then you get it approved, but there'll be a list of conditions. If you followed Wintergreen at all, that project, I think or the Winslow Hotel, they have 60 or 80 conditions attached to the approval. Yeah. So it's not uncommon that it's kind of a yes, but.
Is the hotel still in the mix? Or
not currently, no.
No. Mm-mm. But the Wintergreen property is a done deal now?
The Wintergreen property was approved by the hearing examiner because that's who has the approval authority on that type of project, and it was appealed by Virginia Mason. So that is now they submitted an appeal to Kitsap Superior Court under, I believe, the LUPA, or the Land Use Petition Act, and I'm not quite sure. I haven't seen it, so I don't know what their issues are, what their problem is with it. But so
probably traffic flow, right?
My guess would be traffic and parking. There was never a parking plan provided for the Wintergreen project, and my understanding is the original commercial development had some shared parking. But when it was a commercial development, and parking requirements are different for commercial and residential. So my guess is they're missing a few parking spaces, but for whatever reason, the applicant was never required to submit a parking plan prior to approval. So that still remains to be seen what that parking plan will be.
Yeah, that's weird because I was thinking about getting a small commercial facility, and the city, the first thing they asked was for a traffic flow study. And the spot that I have picked out, and I don't want to say it on the air so nobody snags it, has zero parking issues, really. And the business adjacent had already done a parking study, a few years prior. So I didn't know why that was such a stickler for the city. But to find out a project, like 70 condominiums doesn't have a...
Well, they had a traffic impact analysis.
Okay.
They did.
Just not a parking.
Just not a final parking plan.
Nowhere to put the cars. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just on the Hot Wheel track. It goes round and round. Okay. So we're going to have valet parking, just driving the car around the building all day. We'll see. What are some major fails that you witnessed on city council?
Oh my gosh. Oh, fails? I don't even know. Fails.
Well, the mobility one, but that was a little before your time.
Oh yeah, that was way before my time. We haven't had any levies to fail.
Yeah, there's been very little laws written during the pandemic, huh?
Yeah, we haven't. In my time, I can't really. We didn't.
How about the COVID relief money? Do you think you did the right thing with that, with the allocation of it?
Yeah, I just think we did it too late. I think
kind of like Joe giving us masks now. 2 years later, here's a free mask.
Well, I think that, we're a small jurisdiction. We're a city council that we all have other jobs. We don't understand what we should be doing with relief funds. And so my opinion was that we should do grants as other people are doing and kind of coattail onto other programs that are already set up and not try to do our own thing. But for whatever reason, the ad hoc committee on the council decided to do something different, which never came to fruition. And so then we just did grants. At the very, at the end of the day, that's what I think we ended up doing was just
Is that money all allocated now?
I think so. They ended up going through Kitsap County, I think, and the Bremerton program and allocating small business grants or grants to small businesses.
Were those grants put out to just nonprofit businesses? No. Okay. Good.
No.
Was it just Winslow Corridor or all businesses island-wide?
There was no geographic
restrictions.
Yeah.
Okay. See, this is why we have to do this, to get the facts and not the rumors.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I am not the best person to ask about that, but there weren't geographic restrictions that I can remember, or that, no.
What are your thoughts about the new city manager, Blair King?
I like him. I would say that was a success on council to get him. I think that there'll be some transition. I think we're really fortunate to have an experienced city manager. I think we've lacked that. I think he will help us. I think that when we were going through the hiring process, Bainbridge is a tough spot. And we saw, I forget how many people applied, maybe close to 30. But at the end of the day, he was my first pick. He was my first pick from day one, actually.
Did he ever rescind his application over something?
No.
Somebody did, right? Wasn't there a mix?
Yeah, we had 3 top candidates, and one of them did not. One of them dropped out before the interview process, and then
what was that all about?
I don't know what that was about. We never talked with him. I never talked with him, so I don't know why he dropped out. And then we had 2 candidates that we interviewed, and a council person really put in a hard drive against Blair, basically, and was really advocating for the other candidate, and we had a meeting about it, and after that meeting is when we voted to select Blair, but it was a split vote. I think it might have been 4-3, but after that, the other candidate dropped out. So.
You don't get to vote. You're stuck with me, huh?
So we voted, but then we had this. It was contingent upon this public meeting, this public interview with Blair, where the public could write in questions that they wanted someone to ask, and so that was a Q&A facilitated by the former mayor with him. And I found that interesting. I thought he did a terrific job. And one of the things he said, I think more than once, is that, well, that would be a good question for a city council member, because he's been and he was all throughout the interview process, and he's clear. He understands our form of government, and I don't think our community understands our form of government.
No.
Because they don't understand the role of the city manager versus the role of the council. And that was really clear in a number of those questions. The city manager works for the council. So the only person on staff that council has anything to say anything about is the city manager. And so the council directs the city manager. But the city manager is there to help forward and achieve council objectives and goals, but they don't have a dog in the fight. They're not pushing an agenda. And I think that in the past, what we've seen with some city managers is that it seemed pretty clear they had their own agenda. And I don't sense that with Blair. I think he's really focused on running a municipal corporation. One of the things I said during the interview or hiring process is that, yes, we need someone to help us run this organization, but we're still a little bit country. I don't think we need layers and layers of bureaucracy to get things done just for the sake of bureaucracy, just for the sake of running an organization. And I think that he understands that, and I think he's really action oriented in terms of I mean, I went to his office and I said, can we do this? Or this seems pretty simple. And, sometimes he would say, Christy, I know you're always saying this should be simple. And for whatever reason, it's just not. But he would also just say, oh, okay, it is. And we'll do that. And then it would be done. And at the end of every meeting, it was, what else can I do to help you? And that was so refreshing. Mm-hmm. And I just really feel like he's there to help the council and help the community. And I think he'll do a good job. I think he was looking for a place to relocate, and his wife is a total delight. And I think that they're enjoying the island. And I think he'll be here a while.
All right. Shout out to you, Blair. You got a good recommendation from former councilwoman Christy Carr, but you still need to return my emails, bro. Because I'd love to have you on and introduce you to the community, for sure. So shout out to Blair King. Come on the show. What surprised you the most about being on city council that you just never saw coming? Was it the drama? Was it the long meetings? Was it something that just popped up that you never saw coming?
It certainly wasn't the long meetings, because I had been in long council meetings as a staff person. So if anything, the meetings got shorter when I was on council. But I would just say what you saw. I mean, the kind of sideshow. I was just floored. That surprised me. I really hadn't ever been a part of that. And
can you be more specific about sideshow? Because there was quite a few sideshows.
Well, I think that we really stepped in it over the Planning Commission selection and the City Council selection. We had two people who were appointed, myself and Brenda.
Hi, Brenda.
Roy Johnson. And we didn't do a good job. We didn't display good governance in those situations. And I think we were talking about race and racial equity, and that was messy. And that got personal. And that was hard. That surprised me. And
that was some bullshit.
Well,
I like to talk about race, and I'm willing to talk about race anytime, anywhere. And I really felt like the way that was handled was really poor.
It was exceptionally poor. Yeah. And I include myself in that for sure.
Oh, it's good of you to own that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that we're all learning, right?
Hopefully.
Yeah, and I definitely learned. But that was a surprise, I guess, just to be so personally attacked, particularly from people who don't know me. What
were you getting attacked about?
Oh, being a white woman.
You can't change your spots.
I can't. But I think that people were making assumptions about me that aren't true, and it just was really surprising that people would take those leaps without knowing me or having a conversation with me.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that.
So, the hate mail's real, but I came out of it just knowing my truth and having to just be okay with that. I work for the city of Seattle. They've had a race and social justice initiative for over a decade, and I am in it every day. It is at the forefront of the work we do, so it's not like this was new for me. But it was surprising that it got so personal so quickly, but otherwise, I don't think I had many surprises. I think I was somewhat surprised at. I thought maybe if a council person asked for something to get done, it would, but that wasn't always the case. And it seemed that at a point on some things, it just didn't seem to go anywhere. And I guess I just thought, So that was surprising sometimes that I got so much pushback on what I thought were pretty simple things.
And some people like to push back just to push back.
Well,
they like the argument part of it.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll just give you the example. It's the no parking signs at the Grand Forest entrance. And I was told that, well, we can have a conversation about it next summer. And I said, well, these cars are blocking pedestrians from being able to see when they cross to the Forest to Sky Trail. Between now and the summer, when you want to start to have a conversation, we could have a really serious accident. So what I'm asking for are a couple of signs and some paint. That's not Can we just do that, please? And I just continued to get no. And that was surprising. I was like, okay.
Sometimes it gets done. I lived by the high school, and I wanted the crosswalk as you come over the top of the crest, because sometimes the sun is right in your eyes, or there's the maritime fog in the morning, and there's no reflective stuff in the crosswalk, and then there's only one street light directly over the crosswalk. So there's kind of a blind little hill there, and all the kids are crossing and getting dropped off. And there was more than one time where I was surprised by somebody in the road, just going 10 miles off my road there. And it was just a couple of months, and new crosswalk signs and full illumination on the poles and stuff. Still could be lit a little bit better, but I was thankful that I could ask for something, and they saw the value in it, and things changed. Because at that point, I think there was 4 pedestrians that were hit that year in crosswalks, and it's one thing to put a crosswalk up, but to have it a useful one where people can see it and people will slow down. The flags are one thing, but reflection is huge.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so dark on this island.
Yeah, especially
so much of the year.
Last couple months, it's just been rain and fog and darkness. So.
Yep.
And then the kids don't know any better. There's a crosswalk. I'm free to walk through this. Well, you still got to look, kid. And if my kid was going to use that crosswalk 2 times a day for 4 years, I wanted to make sure it was safe.
Yeah. I think that, the neighborhood traffic calming project, I think the city tried to do a pretty good job of soliciting ideas from people all across the island. I think they ended up, I don't know how far and wide the shout out went. Like, we're trying, and that's always a challenge, I think, because, you're interested in this stuff. I'm interested in this stuff. But my high end estimate of people who are paying attention is maybe 5%. And okay. But in terms of if the city has something they'd like to help you do or they want to do that's a good thing, how can they communicate? How can they get the word out? And
that's why I was so impressed with Kobe Connects. But then that little newsletter died over the pandemic. So, for 18 months or whatever, we're not in the loop on a regular mailing,
Right.
Which I thought that was giving people more than just the opinion of the newspaper.
Yeah, I like Kobe Connects. I shout out to Kristen Drew, who's the communications.
Who still hasn't come on the podcast. Let's go, Drew.
She's phenomenal.
She's a good girl.
She's a force of nature, and she tries so hard. And I think she does a really good job. I think she needs more resources. And again, she just tries. She really wants to be a good communicator, a good communication resource for the city. And she's behind Kobe Connects, and I think has done a really good job with
here's another platform for you, Drew. Come out here and talk about it, because it's one thing to read about it, but to have longer conversations I think would behoove all of Kobe.
Yeah. Well, I was saying about the neighborhood traffic calming. I think they got maybe 300 unique or 300 ideas from neighbors for projects.
And they went with putting cones right down the middle of the lane.
Well, and then but that's. So I guess in terms of like, if it's a one-off crosswalk, or if you want something done, or if somebody else, I know a woman who claims ownership over a crosswalk down on Winslow. Had to work a long time to get that crosswalk in, and it's something that she uses every day. I wish there was more of a system, because it's like, well, should your request be granted, or should her request be granted, or is there, now with these neighborhood traffic calming projects, there's, 300 came in the door, but council only looked at 50 or 20 or 10. Why? And I think that transparency of what are your criteria, and do we all agree with them? And are we when are we talking about it? Because if council's going to be approving something, if they're approving 10 projects, well, have those 10 projects been vetted by staff based on criteria that the council approved? Or are we supposed to trust staff that they got the criteria and the vetting process right? I tend to get into the weeds on stuff like that. Other council members just say, staff tells us these are the 10 best. We'll choose from these.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think that council's presented with door number 1 or 2, and it's actually I want door number 3. And
or I want both doors.
Well, and just it's just that's again like what's the role of a council person? Is it to trust staff? Is it to question staff? Is it to do their own homework? Is it to just read what's presented to them in front of them in a council agenda packet? So
how do you know your role, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think also it's overwhelming the amount of information that a council person has to deal with on any given Tuesday. And council gets the packet when you get the packet. Whatever time of night it's published for the public on a Friday, that's when council's getting it. So there may be things in that agenda packet that council has looked at before. But if not, then that's new information for the council, and you've got the weekend. Spend your weekend reading a 400-page agenda packet.
Tell me I'm wrong about short turnarounds too. It seems to me, and this could be way off base, and if it is, go ahead, smack me upside the head. It seems like there'll be a construction project on the 12th, and then below the reading of the construction project, be like open for public comment on the 11th. So it doesn't seem like there's space between public comment and the actual take action moment. Do you see that happening, or is there a lack of public comment, or what would you call it, systems or measures of public comment? Because it seems like talking to people, they would like to have some input in it and don't seem to find out in time about where they can put their public comment as things happen, because things somewhat happen quickly when they do start to progress.
Are you talking about public projects?
Yeah, new construction, and stuff like that. There'll be a yellow sign that says Kobe comes to whatever.
Right.
This house is going to get demolished tomorrow.
Well, if you're seeing a yellow sign, it's for either a public meeting or it's for a public comment period. And by statute, that's either 14 or 21 days.
Okay.
So it kind of depends on when you
saw the
see
sign.
the sign, because the sign, it's like political signs. They come down when they get knocked down or when someone decides to take them down. So it could be that, you're looking at the sign and, that public comment period is over, or it's ends tomorrow.
Yeah.
So there is for projects that require that public comment period, there's a radius around it of 500 feet. So people who live within 500 feet should get something in the mail that says this is happening. And here's
500 feet, that's like one neighbor, right?
It can be on the island. I mean, many more people are getting those notices in Winslow or Linwood. But on the so anyway, that's the process.
Is it listed on Kobe's website or Kobe Connects where public comment for this, that, and the third project is happening?
So Kobe Connects doesn't have that, I don't think. There is a section on the city's webpage that is called, and you can sign up for these notifications, actually, and they're called Proposed Land Use Actions. And those are listed there. So anything that has that public comment period or has one of those yellow signs, that's a proposed land use action. And so those are listed on the website, and they're hyperlinked to the application, so you can read what it is. But again, if you go onto the city's website, and I think it's something like sign up for notices, and it's the whole list of listservs that you can get. So that's actually a great place for people to go, depending on what they're interested in. There's usually one for city projects. kind of depending on the scope and scale. But like for the Sustainable Transportation Plan, that process, there's a listserv that'll tell you about when the meetings are, and there's a whole website for it. There's the proposed land use actions, so you'll get dinged anytime one comes up. You'll get an email. There's one for the Planning Commission, so you can get all of the agendas for the Planning Commission. There's certainly one for Council. The list is long. If you go on that, any committee, you can get on a listserv for that. So there is a way to find out, but you just have to know where to look, I guess.
Yeah, we need to wrap this up. Is there anything you'd like to see for the future of Bainbridge Island happen now that you're a regular old citizen?
Well, some things I think with my folks think I have all this time now that I'm not on council. Like, I didn't have time before. So, but one of my biggest interests really is food and farming and farmland. And so I think I'll probably return to that. I'd love to see us have a robust farmland preservation program on the island.
I'm part of Friends of the Farm.
Yeah, I'm a former board president and board member.
It seems like there's a new one every year.
Yeah, it's an interesting organization. I was just chatting with them last week and hope to be more involved and kind of revitalize their efforts on farmland preservation. One of my dreams is to do a food levy with the school district to have local food served in our schools. We have had some of that before, but not in a really systemic or institutional way. And there's a lot of
That's a great idea.
And I think, we passed $15 million tech levies. Why not feed our kids? We're not eligible for farm-to-table school grant funds because not enough of our kids, luckily, are eligible for the free lunch program. So we don't have that state funding capability for those programs that are already available. So I'd love to see our community rally around not only our farmers, our farmland, but our kids and getting good food into the school lunch program. And one other thing that I'm really excited about, I'm working with Squeaky Wheels to launch a Bike Buddies program because I think that one way you get more people biking is you see more people biking. And so we're going to have on the Squeaky Wheels website an opportunity for people to sign up to say, hey, I want to go ride my bike from this point to that point, and then they're going to get matched with someone, a mentor, if you will, who's an experienced rider who will show them the way and can talk gear and just to kind of take some of the fear factor out of riding and just to hopefully motivate people to, have a buddy. It's always more fun.
Well, shout out to Grady Cycles there on Day Road who fixed my bike up real well recently. Shout out to Geezers of Fury and the Squeaky Wheel Posse. I do think that if we're going to continue to have the Chili Hilly and call ourselves a bike-friendly island, we need to make it bike-friendly. Like I said, I crashed there on Eagle Harbor. There was a huge rut in the asphalt that caught my front tire and flipped me over. There's dangerous gravel and road crumbling away on the sides, and there's places where you just can't get your bike off the road, and then you look at Fletcher Bay with all those big trucks coming by. It can be scary at times on a bicycle here on this island, and I would like to see this become a more non-motorized friendly island, at least on the long roads that you see, whether it be Sunset to Blodell Reserve or getting to the south end of the island, where there's so many great places to bicycle. And
it's a challenge, no doubt. And I'm part of the 1 or 2% of
fearless riders that don't care.
I'm not fearless, and that's my point. Really, is that I'm confident, but I'm not fearless. I think that I have near misses. I have moments of discomfort for sure, and that's unfortunate. And I definitely, wish my high school kid would ride his bike to school, but he did last year. But that was more because either there was no bus, or I think we opted out of the bus because of COVID. But I think
bicycle to school day.
We try to. Yeah, I just think that it's a challenge to for so many reasons here on this island to create that both perceived and actual levels of safety, because I think that they're different, and I think that if we focus a little bit of our energy on that perceived level of safety, because people who have never ridden their bike, they've just been told, or they have a perception that it's not safe. But I think that that's a perception, and if you get somebody comfortable riding, they will maybe have a mind shift or shift of perspective. That's not to say that there are some parts of our island and some roads that you basically have the fog line, if that, and if you're sharing it with a Bainbridge disposal double load,
good luck.
Not fun. And it's comfort too, and that's a motivator, I think, for people to get out on their bicycles. If it's not a comfortable ride, you don't have a lot of incentive to do it.
Yeah. All right. Former Councilwoman Christy Carr, thank you for your time today.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. It's really nice to make your acquaintance and
likewise.
Find a new friend.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Good resource.
I hope to continue to be a good resource for this island. And with that said, please support us on patreon.com. You've been listening to Bystander. Be kind. Thank you very much.